Hello, welcome everyone to another episode of the Virtual Ninja Show. My name is Heike, and today I have two guests with me. I start with Jaime from Blue Voyant. Please introduce yourself.
Hi, Heike. Thank you for having me. My name is Jaime Guimera. I'm a security and AI architect at Blue Voyant. I'm from Spain, and I work for Blue Voyant. That is a company that provides managed security services for more than 1,000 customers. So the topic today we're discussing today, it's really important for us. So it helps us scale our services and provide better services for our customers.
Thank you so much. And then we have Saggie. Please introduce yourself.
Yeah, Heike, thank you for having me. So my name is Saggie, and I'm a product manager in Defender Engineering, and I'm focusing on our work with our amazing MSSPs.
Exactly, and that's why we are here. So we have basically from partners for partners. So thank you so much for bringing this to the show. So I start right with you, Jaime. So when you think about the challenges that come to MSSP for access management and onboarding new customers, what are these challenges?
The biggest challenge that we face when we are onboarding customers and they are providing us access is transparency, simplicity, and a seamless process. Right now, we have multiple systems that we need access with different access mechanisms, and the process itself, it's a bit complex and it's not easy to follow. It requires multiple steps, multiple roles from the customer's team that we need to involve. And that's why it takes a lot of time. Every time we onboard a new customer, it requires us a lot of documentation, a lot of explanations on what every step means and what it brings and what are the risks of doing it and what we should do it. So having a better process is helping us to onboard in a faster way customers and bring more calmness and transparency to the whole thing.
So when we talk onboarding and customers, obviously it's different for each customer, but what does onboarding include? Like, what are we talking about for onboarding in most cases?
Partners like us, it means two things. It's first is access. Means that we need, as a partner, as a provider, we need access to their environment. We need, we typically work with both Defender and Sentinel access to provide our managed detection and response services. And that means that we need access to two separate things in the customer's environment that has different access controls. That's the first step of the onboarding process. After that, once we have the right access, the customer has provisioned the right package or delegation, we go and do two set of configurations or push our content, our rules, our workbooks, our threat hunts into their environment. So everything lives on their environment. And that's the two steps of the onboarding, where we first get access and then we push the content and the configurations into their environment.
Mm-hmm. So, and I think we actually have some new stuff that helps you with that. And I will let Saggie introduce these concepts.
Yeah, thank you. And I totally kind of feel and understand Jaime's perspective. And for those who probably are aware, in the past, there were two ways to provide access. We had B2B and we had GDAP. But the challenge was that B2B required a lot of configuration, a lot of involvement from the customer, and it was really hard to manage it at scale. And GDAP, or granular delegate admin privilege, was only limited for CSPs. So it means that if you are not a CSP and you don't have a CSP relationship with your customers, you cannot leverage GDAP. So recently we introduced enhanced GDAP capabilities, and GDAP is now a native capability in Defender that allow all the customers and all the partners to leverage GDAP regardless of the CSP relationship that they have. This kind of open the ability for partners to quickly onboard their customers in an easier way.
Okay, so you can't just like tease me with like we enhanced GDAP. So what is the enhancement that it is available for all the also non-CSP, or what are the details?
Yeah, so in the past, in order to leverage GDAP, as I said, you had to go to what we call Microsoft Partner Portal. This is where you can manage your CSP customers. And now you no longer need to do it. You can go directly to Defender. You have the ability to start interacting with your customers. And when we designed it, we had a big dilemma to solve. If you no longer have, the partner portal in order to validate the relationship between the partner and the customer, how can we validate this relationship, right? And this is why we introduced what we call a three-way handshake. In this three-way handshake, the entire relationship starts from the customer. He will go and say, hey partner, can you please manage my environment? And he will send an invitation to manage his environment. Once the partner gets the invitation to manage the customer, it can then go on and define what type of access and who should have the access to the customer environment. And then he will send back an access template for the customer to approve. Once the customer approves, then he can go and approve this relationship. And now the partner will be able to fully manage the customer inside Defender. And the biggest thing in this enhancement is that, as you know, Microsoft Sentinel is moving into Defender, and it will no longer be available in the Azure portal from March 2027. Then Lighthouse is no longer the right way going forward, right? So now it was a blocker for them to move into the Defender. Now it's no longer a blocker.
So a fun question. So how long does it take you to get customers to send those first initial invitation email? So did you send it already?
So from our perspective, before it was really complex. You need to set up all the permissions in GDAP. It will send an email to the customer with a link. That link needs to get through all the mailbox or filters, need to arrive to the right person, and then get the link, click there. It was really complex, right, and tedious. Now you just need to give the tenant ID to the customer, your own tenant, the tenant ID that you are going to use to manage those customers. You just need to give that big number to the customer. The customer will go into the Defender portal. It doesn't need to go anywhere else. No new portals. Is the portal that they're already using. Go there, click on send new invitation. It will put the tenant ID, will send it. That will get to us as a partner provider, and we'll just decide, okay, for this tenant, this is what we need for this customer. We'll select the template with the right roles, the right groups that we want to assign to those roles. We'll ship it back to the customer. The customer will review it and will approve or decline it in just one click. So it's really streamlined process. It's really easy to quickly do it and validate what is happening in the background, and to understand what are the implications. So we are seeing really improvements into how easy customers use and go through this route compared to what we were seeing before.
I missed the part that it is actually through the portal. I thought there is an email that they need to, pull together some information.
You get also notifications by email to let you know that you have to go into the portal and check it. But it can be done directly 100% in the portal.
Can you share, that's why you are on the show, because you are excited about these new enhancements. How do they help you get faster? You just shared one example, which is the invitation, which was a big part, but obviously there's more.
Yeah, that's the main thing, simplicity and transparency in the process. But also, as Saggie mentioned, having one single flow or process to give us access to both Sentinel and Defender data. It's really helping us to complete or achieve this relationship, the establishment of this relationship in just one session with the customer when we have the right people in there. Before, it was two different things, two different portals, two different roles, two different people involved in the process. Now it's just one guy doing 3 steps that we can do in 10 minutes or less inside the same portal. So it's really getting these customers onboarded really, really fast and without any friction, actually. Okay, so let me show you these amazing improvements in a demo. So now we're seeing the MTO version of the Defender portal. So in here, we can manage all these relationships and delegated access. So we can go into the delegated access section of the portal. And here we see all the delegated access relationships that we have or even had in our environment. So this is the governing tenant. It means that this tenant is the one that is managing all these customers' tenant. In this case, we have 4 relationships with 2 different tenants, different templates, which means that there are different access packages or configurations that are applied to every of these relationships. As you can see, we can have multiple relationships with the same tenant. So we can have and define different type of accesses for different roles, different groups, and that it's done through the templates. So when you are creating a template, I have different templates here for different type of customers. We can have for different teams in our environment, and we can have also maybe different templates for different regions. So if we are clustering our tenants or our customers in different regions to give access to different people, because we don't want, we at Blue Boy and as a global company, we might have customers that only can be accessed or managed by peoples in that customer specific region, like for example, European Union. So we can split those templates with different teams that contains people or analysts from different regions specifically. So when you create an access template, you define a name, right? Let's say EU only, for example, and then we say this is EU eyes only, right? And then we select the roles that we're going to apply. We have all these default roles that are coming from Entry ID. It can be not only security related, but also identity, like conditional access one. In this case, we're going to find our security operator. That is typically the role that we use for a SOC analyst. So we create this role, and now we select the group inside our environment that is going to use this role or going to have these roles. In this case, we have SOC analyst group, right? So we select that SOC analyst group, and then this assignment is going to be sent to or can be sent to a customer.
Quick question. So I guess that the role that you picked, the security operations, is, you said it's like an out of the box role, but you could create your own with your own permissions behind it. Is that correct?
Right now, it's only out of the box roles.
Okay.
Right?
Okay. But they're sufficient for the needs.
Yeah, they cover most of the. It's always tricky because you want to assign the less privileged role, and that sometimes means that you need to create your own custom rules, and it's not available right now through the new GitHub. But it's really well split, and you saw that there were many roles in there. So you just need to know which exact role you need to assign the less privileged permissions there.
Okay. Thank you.
As I was saying, you can do multiple assignments in the same template, so all of these will get applied. So, for example, if you have security admins, right, you can say, all right, these people have more permissions than the typical SOC analyst. This group of people can manage that tenant, can create new policies, can create new rules in there. That means that this might be the SOC engineering team, right? So we can create multiple assignments with multiple roles and groups, and then distribute this across the customer base. So then when you have these templates, the way to bind those templates into a customer, once that initial invitation it's done, you come here and then you say, I want to send a relationship request. That means that these are the tenants that I have already been invited to provide that relationship request. So these are my customers that are telling Microsoft, this Blue Boy tenant, it's allowed to send me this type of request. I will then review them and approve them, but they are allowed to send those requests to me. So for example, I'm going to use this one, and I'm going to send that new you-only template relationship to that tenant. This will go and create an approval request into that other tenant. So if we go into the customer tenant, right? So this is what the customer tenant looks like. If I go into permissions, if I have the right role in that tenant, I can access the delegated access, and then we see the request that has been done for this tenant, right? In this case, I have a pending approval request here that it's telling me that the tenant is requesting these 3 roles. This is another approval request. So I can see exactly which is the group ID and the permissions that this provider, this MSSP or partner is requesting. Then I can approve or reject that request. And once this is done, all the users of the partner in these groups will have these roles in the customer tenant.
But that also, imagine you would have created your own role and it just says my own role, so nobody would know what are the permissions you're actually granting. So I think that all makes total sense, right? So everybody can review what is the role, security operator, and they know. Yeah.
They are well-known roles. If you
Exactly.
introduce custom roles, you need to add an additional level of transparency to understand what are the actual atomic permissions that role is entitled to.
Just to add one point from my side, one of the challenges that we had before is that usually those activities required high privileged. And one of the enhancements that we did here is that we introduced 4 new Entra role that allow you from both of the MSSP side and the customer side to manage the entire workflow that we just saw without providing roles like global admin or security admin. So those new 4 roles will help you do this. So Jaime, now you just provided Entra permissions to the Defender portal. Can you please show us how it will provide access to Microsoft Sentinel?
Yeah, Saggie. So that's the right question to ask. We said that we wanted to have, or this helping us getting the whole access package at once. What we now need to do is go into Sentinel and go into the resource group where Sentinel lives on Azure, then go into the access control and then add a new role assignment. The new thing here is that now we are not only able to assign access or give access to specific users or groups in our tenant, but once we select the right roles, for example, Sentinel contributor, right? We then can select a remote tenant group. These are the groups that are living in the partner tenant that were binded into our tenant with that relationship that we created with the new GDAP. So now when we are selecting the members of that remote group, we can see all the different tenants that we have provided access to our environment and select the right group that we want to give access to Sentinel. In this case, for example, we're going to give the SOC engineering team access to our Sentinel environment. And when this is done, this team will have access to our environment through the Defender portal from partner tenant.
Wow. Okay. Now that you are managing this new customer, I guess there is things that you want to distribute, like policies, and as you mentioned, analytic rules or all kind of things. So how does that work?
Definitely now we can manage those tenants, right? In this case, we going back into our MTO partner tenant. We see our tenants here. We can group those tenants in tenant groups. That means that we can distribute our tenants, our managed tenants, into different groups and apply different policies, different rules, different content, or even use them to run search queries across these groups at once. So in this case, we can distribute these tenants as we please or how better fits to the partner. In this case, we can have regional groups, for example, for EU-based or US tenants, for example, or tenants where we have certain limited access, like read-only, or tenants where we have multiple or different type of services. In this case, we have threat hunting tenants, where we have maybe a service that provides proactive threat hunting, or the MDR, where we have more detection and response tenants. In this case, this is up to the partner how we distribute these tenants to provide a more seamless experience for our users, right? So once we have these tenants groups created, we can go into the content distribution piece where we then assign content from our tenant or from a source tenant and distribute it across the tenant groups that we saw before, we defined before. Again, these content distribution groups can contain many type of items. Let's start with this, the Ninja group. Then we assign the tenants that we want to apply this, all right? Let's select all of them. And then we decide which is the content, which is the artifacts that we're going to distribute to those tenants. And now you can see that we have two types of artifacts here. One are related to the Sentinel piece of the unified XDR portal, the analytic rules, the automation rules, and the workbooks and safe searches. And then we have the more defender side of it, like alert tuning, custom detection rules, and the endpoint security. So if we want to, for example, create a distribution that it's only focusing on Sentinel, we will take out custom detections and endpoint security policies because those are focusing on Defender. And then we only leave, for example, analytic rules and some workbooks. Then we select the content for each one of the items or the artifacts. And in here, we can select the source tenant where we are sourcing those items, those artifacts, and then pushing them into the right tenant.
Did you use Azure Lighthouse before? And do you have what's different now for those that are maybe still using Azure Lighthouse?
Yes, Azure Lighthouse was our main content distribution access for Sentinel, right? And we're still using that for most of our customers. The idea is that we are going to be moving into MTO as the limits go higher, and it allows us to manage more customers at once, and more custom roles are the bundle into the GDAP mechanism. Also, more content types are bundled into the MTO content distribution. Right now, we are using it to specific customers that matches the actual capabilities of the tool, but it's helping us in those customers to manage everything from here directly in one single place where we can ship and monitor the content that's living in those customer tenants.
Hi, I just want to add what's it from my side. So Azure Lighthouse was an amazing solution. I think that we all love this solution and use it extensively across the Microsoft Sentinel. But as we said in the beginning, Microsoft Sentinel is moving inside Defender, and Azure Lighthouse is not supporting the Defender. Right now, we have a new access mechanism, and this is where we need to start leveraging MTO and GDAP, what we're talking about today, or B2B for the customers and partners that it's work for them. We're still supporting B2B. Now, even though we are in the transition into the Defender, and we are leveraging GDAP and we are using MTO, and we can do way more than we can do in the past, the Lighthouse is still required. And when it's required in a specific scenario. Workspace operator, for those who are still leveraging workspace operator, if they will want to continue use it in some cases, then they will still need to have the Azure Lighthouse. And if they still need to access resources that are outside of Sentinel, like function apps that are used for connectors, and DCR and DCE that are outside of Sentinel, they will still need to use Azure Lighthouse in order to access Azure resources. Right? We are working on providing a full parity in MTO and removing the need of Azure Lighthouse, but as of now, it's still required.
Okay, so that also means that Blue Voyant, as you said, you're still operating both for these needs. Okay. And then I think there currently is the limit of 100 tenants, but I mean, you need, first of all, 100 customers. But then you would probably create a second tenant group, or because the limit is per tenant group, you can have 100 customers, if I understood this correctly.
Yeah, so you are totally right. And there is a little bit of confusion. MTO has support to as many tenants as you need. Right, so you can onboard 500 or 1,000. There is no limit there. Where we have the limit in the ability to view or take actions on more than 100 tenants, which we are working on increasing. But in order to mitigate it, this is where we can use the tenant groups that Jaime showed. So we can classify our customers based on geolocation, based on services, as Jaime explained. And from the MTO portal, we have the ability to quickly change our context from one tenant groups to another and continue our work seamlessly in day-to-day. And Jaime, maybe you want to show the experience on how we can change tenant groups and how immediately everything changed to this context.
Yeah, so let me show you directly here in the portal. So if you click on the top right corner icons, you will see all the tenant groups that you have, all the individual tenants in case you just want to select one of them. But in this case, we see all these tenants, and just by clicking in one of them, it will open a new screen with that context, right? That tenant group. Only those tenants that are included in that group will apply into the things that you can see here, like, for example, the incidents. If you want to see all the incidents of those tenants in that group, you just filter that tenant group, and all the incidents will be filtered to only those tenants in the group.
Okay, cool. So I think I learned a lot. Thank you both so much for joining today. Thank you so much, Jaime, for bringing a demo and actually walking us through the experience and sharing how you and Voyant actually uses our technology. And thanks everyone for watching, and I hope I'll see you all soon again. Bye.